Hey pals, welcome to WP Roundtable episode 190. My name is Kyle, doing WordPress stuff in Jackson, Michigan for a company called Sandhills Development, and I've got an amazing guest on the show today. I'm really excited to talk with Ben Meredith. How you doing, Ben?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
Pretty swell. It's a great Monday. I've been doing some fun stuff today. You've been kind of working through some drudgery. All right. I know how it goes. We can relate. But we're gonna take a break and just talk about you, Ben, and get to know your story. And that's going to be pretty interesting. I'm excited about it. So thanks for coming on.
Absolutely.
Before we dive into Ben's story, we're going to share quick picks of the week. Just a quick part of the show where each of us shares something timely and relevant we've discovered recently that we think is worthy of sharing with the world. Lots of stuff for me lately, but the one that I'm going to go with is the Confident Couples podcast, which is started by a friend of mine, Sarah Dunn. She is doing cool stuff in WordPress and runs an agency and does all this SEO things that are, I don't know, pretty neat, and participates in like local WordPress stuff in Michigan. But her and her husband made a new podcast, so I just want to give a shout out to that. And I've been listening to the first few episodes, and I think they do a great job. So I queue up podcasts of all different types, and this is the first one that I have tuned into of this nature, but I actually enjoy it. So I encourage people to check it out. Ben, do you have something to check out?
Yes, and it is not web related at all, other
Awesome.
than I listen to it while I am doing web development. That's as close as it gets. But I just discovered the band The Steel Woods. That's
Whoa.
like wood, like the thing, and then steel, the thing. The Steel Woods. And it's like Leonard Skinner vibes for real. And being from the South and being a huge fan of Southern rock and all of that, I have just been addicted. It's been like 2 weeks, pretty much constantly spinning while I'm working. I'm one of those people that can work with any kind of music going on in the background, and the Steel Woods have become my wife is like, seriously, can we listen to something else, anything else other than the Steel Woods? I'm like, okay, I guess. But yeah, just discovered them a couple of weeks ago, and you should check them out. They're on.
I certainly will.
Yeah, man.
Always looking for more things to queue up, on the Spotify. So thanks for the recommendation. We'll check it out. Check out Steel Woods. Let's talk about your background first, Ben. Let's move into that. I want to understand the story of essentially how you got where you are. We can cover the fun stuff, but my favorite place to start is generally the inception of your actual career. Go back to a time where you had your first vision of what the future might hold for you, or the path that you should walk down. You started to have some reflection on like, what's my place in the world, and what should I do, and how can I make an impact and pay my bills? And you started to get serious about those thoughts for the first time, and you started to take your first steps on building a career. Take us back to that time, what your vision was and what those first steps you took were.
Sure. So I kind of backed into web development and web design and web, all the web stuff. I was working full time in Christian ministry for a large nonprofit, and I had a boss who said, "Can you make us a website?" And I thought, no, but I can try. And so I had recently purchased a new Mac, and he said, "You have a new computer. Can you make us a website?" Which is fun because they're not related, those two facts. And so I did. I did have a new computer, and I had told him, in fairness, that I wanted to learn web development stuff. And so it was a good first step. And so that was kind of the beginning. That was around 2010 or 2009-ish. And then shortly after that, 2010, I became unemployed, and while I was looking for other work, just kind of doing some little freelancy things on the side, and discovered WordPress, the software, but definitely not WordPress, the community yet. And so I was using WordPress because a friend of a friend had said, "Oh, you got to use WordPress, you got to use this theme." And so I kind of dove in, and started, I gave a WordCamp talk where I said, now as a support technician, I get to answer support tickets. Back then I was asking really bad questions on support forums. And so now it's karmic retribution. That actually our customers are pretty good. They don't ask very many dumb questions by comparison, but I definitely did, and spent a lot of time just kind of banging my head against that. And so was working for Starbucks and AT&T and whoever would hire me because my kids love to eat. It's just this thing they do.
Kids.
And so then this 2013, I had gotten let go again, this time from a sales gig that was local here in the Triangle area in North Carolina. And they let me go, and I kind of really said, I'm going to double down on web stuff. And at the time, I would have told you I wanted to be a web developer when I grew up. I wanted to get as deep into the code as possible, and make custom themes or custom plugins or something like that would have been my answer. And so I really did kind of figure out, like, go to a website and starting from the browser, go all the way to the server and figure out all these technologies in between. And I kind of ended up bouncing back and forth between that, and landed in the space that's kind of before the design part of it. I like the development part of it. So I was like, I'm going to make a plugin. I don't love CSS and JavaScript and that kind of stuff. At the time, I couldn't do hardly any of that. And so I was like, I'm going to hone in on PHP and figure that out, and launched my first plugin, which was a client need. She had a blog that she was managing the content for. It was these really cool long form blog posts that were just completely evergreen. Topics were like how to build your own wine cellar. So it's like not going stale ever. Like, it's a completely evergreen type of thing, but they were not converting well. And her guess was because there was a big date plastered across the top of it. And she said, I want to take the date off of old posts, but leave the date on new posts, because I think the date helps on new posts and it hurts on old posts. Can you make a plugin that does that?
Okay.
And I thought, sure. Since then, I'm not a huge fan of that whole philosophy, but I did it anyways. I built a plugin that, checks server date, checks the browser date, and, does the math and says, or the post date and the server date, and does the math and takes the date off of old posts. And that was my first real plugin. And it's still there on the repo. I think it's got a couple thousand active installs or something.
Yeah.
And then shortly after that plugin is when I got introduced to WordPress, the community. And that was through WordCamp Raleigh here locally. Got introduced to that and sat in the developer track and watched the concepts just fly over my head. And so shortly after that, same client had a different, end client need to add click-to-tweet boxes to posts and pages. She was like, I want one of those plugins that adds the little boxes that says click to tweet, and you can put the text into your readers' mouths and have them tweet for you. And so I went and looked at the WordPress directory and didn't find any that I really loved how they were doing it. In fact, found one that was really popular at the time, but didn't use the shortcode API because it predated it. And so I released a plugin, and because I'm fantastic at naming things, it was called Click to Tweet, and I named mine Better Click to Tweet. It's really, I'm a branding expert. You should hire me for that. I'm really good at that. No, I'm not. But yeah, so I released Better Click to Tweet, and it quickly surpassed that Click to Tweet plugin to become the most popular Click to Tweet plugin in the marketplace. And I viewed it as a resume the whole time. Like, I was going to either use it to build up freelance clients, because I had one or two that were enough to feed the family, but I wanted to grow that, or I was going to use it to get a job. And spoiler alert, I now work for GiveWP as full-time as their senior support technician. So that was my resume, was Better Click to Tweet there. So yeah, that's kind of the whole story from beginning to end. But at the very beginning, it was there was no thought in my mind that support was what I wanted to do. In the middle, there was no thought in my mind that support was what I want to do. But now, if you'd ask me what I want to be in 5 years, I don't want to go any farther into the development weeds. I want to figure out how to translate between developer speak and end user speak. I want to be that happy medium, because I think that's where the real fun is for me. I really enjoy connecting and teaching people how things work. And I'm just never going to be the best developer out there. I don't like it enough. But I think I could become really good at kind of that translation piece, taking somebody who either doesn't want to understand, just wants their website to work, or wants to understand how this development topic or concept works, and being able to explain it to them and help them with whatever problem they're having. That's what really excites me. I love taking angry customers and making them happy customers. It's my favorite.
Oh, that's so nice.
It was funny when I worked at AT&T, speaking of angry customers, we called them bill waivers. You know, I'm in the retail store, so people would
Mm.
call on the phone, get so angry at the AT&T customer support reps that wouldn't answer their question on the phone. And so they'd finally just pack it up and come down to the store, and they'd be holding their paper bill over their head and like running into the store. And I worked with a bunch of like 19, 20, 21-year-olds, and I was about 10 years older than that. And they would just scatter. I mean, my coworkers, whenever they saw a bill waiver come in the door, they're like, I'm not dealing with an angry person today. And they would just scatter. And I always thought, oh, no, this was mine, because I knew if I could make them happy, solve their problem, which was, you know, some issue on their bill, solve that problem, and they'll spend $700 in my store right now. You know, and that became, it was just like a challenge, like a puzzle. Like, how can I make this person happy? And that has definitely translated over into my support career. It's really fun. That's my favorite moment, just to take that person that comes in using the F word, and not fun, like a different F word,
Yeah.
and making them happy. So really enjoy that.
Wow. Looking back at the, you know, your personality, the talents that you have, and the path you originally tried to walk on, are you surprised at where you ended up?
In a lot of ways, yes. You know, if you'd asked me, I mean, I was a religious studies major in college, so surprisingly, they don't cover PHP in those classes. Like, I had no training, and so if you'd asked me in college, are you, you know, where do you see yourself in 20 years? I definitely would never have expected this. But on the flip side of it, a lot of what I do here is directly related to the religious studies training and the theological training and all the stuff that I received while I was in college, because people are still people. The angry customer, if you understand that they're angry and how you can help them be less angry, it's a philosophical question that you're helping to answer. And so I definitely have always been and always wanted to be a teacher, in that sense, not like a elementary, high school, middle school teacher, but like, I like the act of teaching things to people and always have. And in a lot of ways, I'm using that skill more now in customer support than I ever did as a campus minister. So yes
Really?
and no.
Mm, mm. I find it can be interesting watching, like, hindsight 2020 kind
Hmm.
of thing, but just like looking back at everybody's story, and along the way what they thought would the outcome would be changed many times.
Right.
And so like at one stage you think, you know, I think I'm going there, and you know 2 years later, you know, I actually
Hmm.
think I'm going to end up there, and so on,
For
year
sure.
after year. You know, have all these different visions, and sometimes for some people they don't. They're often totally unrelated, or just crazy changes. It doesn't
Hmm.
sound like that is quite the case in your story. Like you were aiming, and you know, just a little bit out of the target, and then
Hmm.
found it before too long. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I mean, it only took like a decade and a half, though, so I don't know about before too long. But no,
Yeah.
it's definitely all kind of interrelated. There's an interplay there for sure that's been fun to watch. And you know, my wife sometimes will have to remind me of that. She's like, no, like, we're still going down the same path that we were going down in 2013 when you left that job, you know, or got told to leave that job. You know, we're still going down that same path. It's just looked way different than we would have ever predicted, for sure.
I think a lot of us might agree, or with saying that our time spent freelancing
Hmm.
is was kind of our education.
Yep.
That was the trial by fire. That was like learning under pressure, figuring out how this industry works.
For
and
sure.
and for most of us, we didn't end up doing, I shouldn't say most of us, a lot of us ended up doing something a little different. Maybe it's just a larger scale at an
Right.
agency, or maybe doing products or something. But the overwhelming majority of us have that similar background, and
Hmm.
wouldn't trade it, because that was very essential experience. Like
Hmm.
we couldn't do what we do today without those experiences.
Yep.
Yeah. Anyway, um, you freelanced for about how long?
So I left that, or got kindly asked to leave that sales gig, which, by the way, I worked there for 53 whole days. But in February 18th of 2013, and then I started working with Give in, gosh, I guess it was April or so of 2016. So about 3 years, 3 years and some change in doing full-time freelance work. I was also working at my church part-time as a music leader, leading the music on Sunday mornings. And so,
Wow.
yeah, I was doing that maybe 5-10 hours a week, and then started working with Give, overlap Give and the church job for about 6 months to a year. Yeah, something like that. And then
Sure.
now I'm just at Give and all of my side gigs, like Better Click to Tweet, which is still there, and I've developed some add-ons for that too. So,
Sure.
but yeah, so about 3 years though, in answer to your question of freelancing.
Do you play an instrument?
I play guitar, yes.
Okay. Wow. How
I
cool.
also play percussion, as long as you don't involve my feet. As soon as you involve my feet, my percussion becomes very, very non-rhythmic. But I can play like hand drums pretty well. So
Okay.
I do that. I still do that at the church. I don't get paid for it, but I still lead with the percussion from time to time. And every now and then I'll break out the guitar and help out in the band that way, but not vocationally anymore.
Senior support engineer or something like that. Was
Right?
that what you said the title was?
Senior support technician.
Technician. Okay.
Yeah,
Sorry.
we'll take it.
Yeah. Anyway, break us down a little bit what you're responsible for.
Hmm.
The products specifically, and maybe even briefly what they do, if in case
Sure.
someone doesn't know.
So I work for GiveWP, which is the most robust platform for accepting donations on your WordPress website. Um, but no, it's a donation plugin. It's a donation platform. I describe it to people who know e-commerce. I'm like, it's like WooCommerce, but without a cart, right? You don't. It's just a donation form on your page where you can just accept a donation directly. And I started working there in 2016 with the title Senior Support Technician. At the time, it was just me and Matt on the support team full time. And since then, Matt is my boss, who is the head of support. He also wears several other hats, but head of support was the one that most directly impacts me. And my job is to kind of, like I said, I'm like a customer ambassador to the development team and a developer ambassador to the customers. And
Mm,
so I spend most of my time, I do some free support, but most of my time is in the priority support, which is for paying users of our add-ons or add-on bundles. And so if, say, for example, the Stripe add-on is not playing nicely with another plugin on a customer site, and they submit a support ticket, I'm the one who replicates the incompatibility with the other plugin, makes sure that it is replicable, and then creates an issue on GitHub to escalate that up to the development team. Every now and then, I will also figure out the fix as I'm escalating it up, but most of the time, I try to stay in my lane. My lane is to isolate the problem so that the development team can patch it as quickly as possible. And so, yeah, I do that for all of our add-ons. I think we're up in the 30 add-ons or so
mm,
now, and that includes payment gateways and things like connecting your donors to your Git or to your MailChimp lists, or our tributes add-on, which allows you to accept a tribute and send an e-card or a physical card to somebody who's being honored with a donation. Our recurring add-ons, the most popular one other than just payment gateways. So yeah, I do that. And then documentation is another part of my job. So I view it as when I get a good support ticket that allows me to find a problem, and then I go look at the documentation, I can see the hole in our documentation without somebody helping me see that hole in the documentation. Because I'm so familiar with the plugin, I I look at the documentation and don't see any holes. But then when I read it through some customer's eyes, they come to me and say, "Hey, I read your documentation and go do this and this and this," and then it didn't work. I can go look at that documentation and say, "Oh yeah, it's not really clear that you have to do this step first." And so I'll go and add that to the documentation or create new documentation, things like that. So
mm.
that's probably, it needs to be a higher percentage of my time, but that's probably 10% of my time is spent on documentation. And then we've got 2 other folks on the team that I don't manage them in an official capacity, but I do help out a lot with, if they're having trouble with issues, they'll escalate them up to me to get another set of eyes on them, to be able to replicate bugs quicker, or to isolate other issues. So yeah, spend all my time in Help Scout, answering tickets and trying to replicate issues and spinning up sites locally. I'm wearing my local by Flywheel shirt, but spinning up sites locally to try to get things replicated and fixed. So yeah, I really enjoy like I said, the puzzle pieces, like figuring out what the real issue is that the customer's having, and fixing it as quickly as possible.
I've seen even some videos fairly recently.
Yeah, we do videos. That's, as a senior support technician, that's one aspect of my job that the other support techs don't have to do as much of, but writing blog posts and content for the blog. And so I'll video myself, screencast of showing how to use a plugin or whatever. And so I think I'm up to like 5 or 6 videos on YouTube. I tell my kids that I'm on YouTube just because, that's like cred for a 8-year-old. They're like, my dad's on YouTube. I'm like, don't look it up though. You're going to be very disappointed. I'm not wearing a GoPro at any point. So anyways.
Well, maybe you could.
Yeah, I could just, high adventure donation forms.
Yeah.
Today I'm here on the top of this mountain to show you how to debug JavaScript.
I would watch that. I think I'm not alone.
That's great.
Yeah, you should pitch that, Ben. Great idea.
I'm for it.
Okay. So you've been there since 2016. A lot has changed at the company over that time period. And Give, like the company behind it, now known as Impress, I think, or impress.org.
Yes, we were WordImpress, and now we are Impress or impress.org. Most of the time when we say it, it's impress.org.
Okay. I'm still figuring that out. It's fairly new change, I guess.
Me too.
It's cool. What a cool company. And of all the companies in our space, it's one of those more similar to ours, to St. Hills Development, in like size and structure and trajectory and multiple different products and and just a lot of the things going on. Even the code base has like a shared ancestry. But I know that a lot has changed in the company over even just the short time period that you've been there, 3 years. The company's probably grown, I don't know, 75% or something.
Yeah, I was the first full-time remote hire, and now I don't want to guess at the number, but it's probably somewhere in the 10 or so in the US, and then 3 developers in India. So yeah, we've grown a bunch. There was 4 of us full-time when I came on, and that included the 3 partners.
Right. Right. Who are all in San Diego.
That's correct.
Right. Okay. Anyway, in that time frame, like, what have been the most impactful changes? Like, if you were the full-time support and it was like just you and Matt doing support, and now there's like an actual team doing support, like, what do you think have been some of the changes that most affected you and the customers and the business in terms of like new roles or expanded teams and coverage, or even maybe even policies if you want to go there, or like things that the company has done?
Yeah, I think Kevin Hoffman, who's a developer full-time out of Pittsburgh, who's been on this very show, but he bringing him on, he helped the team to really, and Devin obviously had a huge part in this too, but they moved to a more agile workflow. And that from a development side was wonderful, but from a support side was like earth-shatteringly brilliant, because it went from me having to say, customer asks for feature X. I go and look at GitHub and try to figure out if feature X is anywhere on any kind of roadmap. And I go, and so then I go to Slack and say, hey, is feature X on any kind of roadmap? Now it's there. It's all there. It's very well, and that not just the agile workflow, but just the prioritization of communication that Kevin brought in, because Kevin's remote as well, and that I think helps with communication, because you get a lot of when you're all in the same office, there's a lot of looking over the cubicle wall and saying, "Hey, are we going to do that thing today?" And they say yes and okay, and you don't document it anywhere.
Right.
Whereas if you're remote, you got to ask it on Slack, and then there's a record of it, and then there's, or on GitHub, comment on the issue or whatever. So that was, from a support perspective, the most impactful thing that's happened from a non-support perspective. The other big thing that changed a lot was, as we started to hire additional developers or additional support technicians, it became immediately clear that our onboarding process and kind of how we do support needed to be documented better. What is it that makes our support distinct from other plugin shops or other WordPress companies, or how is it that we are, how can you, without having to go ask Ben or Matt how to do something, how can you know what it is that you should do? And so Matt and I set about the process of writing our support manual, which we then subsequently open sourced, and it's available. If you go to GiveWP.com, there's links to our support manual. And that was really the outworking of that process. We saw we've got a real problem with there's some information that really only lives in Ben's head and really only lives in Matt's head, about how to handle certain situations, whether it's an angry customer or an out of scope request, or, these kinds of things where it's like, how can I make sure that how I answer this is the right way to answer it, and without having to duplicate work where I have to say it 15 times to somebody. And so we wrote the support manual really for that. And that has dramatically changed our role, in that we can now just reference back to that. We still have to say it a lot because people are people, and I'm the same exact way. I forget how exactly I should respond to whatever issue. And so having the support manual there to go back and reference and say, no, here's what we said we were going to do when that type of issue comes up. When somebody is asking me a question that's really a question more suited for this other department, whether it's marketing or the communication team, or whether it's a licensing issue where I need to send it to our customer success team. How do I deal with that? Oh, it's in the support manual. It's right there. And so having that as a reference, and then using it, that's the key. It's only, the reference is only as good as you're remembering to use it over and over and over. So yeah, those two things. And they both happened around, I guess, a year or so ago, is when we really finalized the agile workflow. Was right around San Diego, WordCamp San Diego of 2018. And then right after that was the support manual, I guess. I could be getting those timelines all wrong.
One of the things that we've talked a little bit about before, you've given talks before about support at WordCamps. And in the past, you've talked a little bit about it from the perspective of a customer, how to get good support. And I've seen some great talks on this topic, and I think there's a lot of room for more discussion about it, and more communication to people about like just how to interact with support representatives in order to get the result you want quickly and accurately. But now you're working on a talk from the other perspective, like how to give great support, and you've got a few years experience, high volume for a very a large user base for this plugin. What are some of the things that inspired you specifically, like problems you saw or frustrations or, that made you think, I really need to do a talk about this?
Yeah, honestly, it was as Matt and I interfaced, either publicly in our support channel on our Slack team or privately in direct messages, to watch how he responded to problem users or angry customers or whatever. It was really eye-opening for me to be like, oh wow, because my natural personality, if you're into Myers-Briggs, I'm an ENTP, which is basically like the debater personality type. And so I like
that's a great fit for support.
Yeah, I like to be right. You know what I'm saying? And so when somebody comes to me and they say, you're dumb and your team's dumb and your product is stupid and I want a refund, I like start building like a 15-point outline in my mind of like, my team is not dumb. In fact, we have 75 years of combined education. It's like I'm building a debate, in my mind. And so Matt is very much different personality wise in that respect. And for him to watch how he responded to problem users. And I would, early on, when I was brand new and even up to probably a year into support, because I know that about myself. I know that I'm way too defensive. I would send him a draft, or I would basically make a draft of my response to angry customer and say, what do you think about this? And he was great. He'd say, do you think how is this going to be received by the customer? He would ask me a question like that. And it's like, yeah, they're probably not going to like that. They're probably going to, it's probably going to make them more defensive, and we're going to just get into an argument, and then they're going to ask for a refund. And so learning that skill set of, for me, it's just ignoring the insult, like, he called me dumb. I'm going to just look past that and solve his problem. Or her problem, and putting myself, like that empathy piece I was talking about, but putting myself into the shoes of the end user. And for a lot of our users, they are, they're nonprofit volunteers that have like 15 roles, and one of them is manage the website. And it's like they are super frustrated and not technically savvy at all. And they don't have any desire to become technically savvy. They're not looking to be a PHP developer. They want their stinking website to accept donations. And they bought this add-on that's supposed to make it take recurring donations, and now it's not working, and they want it to work. And so they're angry, but they're not really angry at me. Even if they call me names or whatever, they're not angry at me. They want the problem to work. And so if I can fix the problem, if I can look past the insult and fix the problem, it solves everything. They come back and say, thank you so much. I was really under a lot of stress. My boss was breathing down my neck and da-da-da. Or even if they don't come back and say that, I know that they think that. And so that's always a fun thing to keep in my back pocket. It's like, I know you want to say I'm sorry for the language you used in your first support ticket, and that's okay. You don't have to say it. I know that it's true. But yeah, fixing their problem solves the problem, and solves the anger. And so watching how Matt did that, that was really eye-opening for me. Because like I said, it's just not naturally where my brain goes. And it's a learned skill. And I'm actually getting better at it live. Like I used to, like, we've never done really like live support where it's like a chat window or even screen shares or things like that. But here lately, we've started to do a little bit more of that. If somebody has an issue, I'll just pop into a hangout and solve the problem with them live. Whereas 2 years ago, I couldn't have done that. I would have made the company look bad, because I'm just not, my personality is not great for that. But I've really learned a ton in how to help customers and to see what their problem really is. And people are generally nicer to you on a hangout than they are via email anyways. Nobody's going to get on a hangout and cuss you out, or if they do.
That's mostly true. Yeah.
So
do you think people hiring for support should concern themselves with personality types?
Not necessarily. I do think that there are certain folks that are naturally going to be better at support. But like I said, I tell you a funny story about people hiring and doing personality profiles. So that sales gig that lasted 53 days that I got hired for in 2012-ish, they did this exhaustive personality test as a part of the hiring process. And one of the things they rank you on is empathy. Well, in my exit interview, 53 working days later, they basically told me that on a scale from 0 to 100, with 0 being like, I don't know, a psychopath, and 100 being like a psychotherapist. I don't know. Like, I don't know how you rank these things, but 0 to 100 on empathy, I got a 2. So just slightly better than a psychopath. Which, first of all, I would like a recount. I think I misunderstood a question. I don't think I'm quite that bad. Maybe, yeah, but, and second of all, that company ended up firing their entire sales team for various reasons, and they don't even have a sales team now. So it wasn't just me. But honestly, that helped me a lot to be, seeing that I had a relative blind spot in that area helped a lot. But I think the key when you're hiring somebody is to hire somebody who has teachability, has the ability to see and not take themselves seriously. Like, we spend a lot of time in our support Slack kind of, dogging on ourselves. It's like, hey, guess what? I just spent 45 minutes and it was a semicolon. Like, it's like, if you can't take yourself, if you take yourself too seriously, support is not for you, because it's one of those things where not only do you have to deal with people coming at you that are, you meet them at their most dire point, they finally gave up and asked for support on a support forum. But you're also dealing with people, dealing with skills that it takes a while to learn it, and you're not familiar with all of the add-ons. And so you can't expect yourself to be familiar with all of the code base because you didn't write it. And so you got to take yourself lightly and just fail quickly, but fail small, like, hey, I would much rather you come to me 15 minutes into trying to debug an issue and say, what am I missing, than to spend 2.5 hours on it and lose your ability to form complete sentences because you're so angry. And then, like, no, just admit it out loud in the support channel. Hey guys, I'm having trouble with this issue. Can you help me with it? And that's the skill set that we value the most, I think, when we're looking to hire. Of course, I don't do much of the hiring. Matt does ask me about the hiring stuff, but ultimately that's his ball game, and he's done a really good job of it. But I mean, obviously, he hired me. So
right.
I mean, you know what I'm saying.
I know what you're saying.
But yeah, so I think that, yes, personality stuff does matter, but no, it's not a deal breaker unless there's also a lack of ability to accept criticism. I think that's one of the things that our team does really well. Like, if I say to one of my teammates, hey, you really just dropped the ball there, no big deal, but you dropped the ball there, for him to say, yeah, or her to say, yeah, I did, you're right, instead of trying to defend yourself. That's our tone guide that's in our support manual. It's got 4 acronyms. It's confident, not apologetic. So we don't apologize for stuff that's not our fault, and we're confident that we can fix most of your problems. Results oriented, not argumentative. That one's super key. And these are all things that you can look for in an interview. Results oriented, where I want to solve your problem. This is the one that naturally I struggle with the most, because I want to debate and argue. So results oriented is key. And then educational, not haughty or overly technical. I think that's a trap that we can all fall into. You start using jargon and you start confusing the customer. And so if somebody on the interview is dropping all the jargon and trying to impress you with their insider speak, and they use words like repo and that kind of stuff, like, it's a red flag. And then W is welcoming, not thankful. It's weird to say that we're not thankful, but we don't lead with being thankful. We don't lead with thank you so much for your call. Like, it's, your call is very important to us. Please hold for the next available operator. Like, that, you're not actually saying that when you say thank you. That's what the customer hears, is just kind of the white noise of whatever. But instead, we're welcoming and we're excited. When somebody hits us up for support, it's like, great, I get an opportunity to clarify this for you. I'd love to help with that. And so looking for those kind of character traits in an interview is way more important. I wouldn't say more important than the technical skill, because you've got to have some of that. But even that can be taught. It's harder to teach somebody how to be personable and teachable. So that's what I look for the most if I'm trying to look for somebody to work with.
Gotcha. Wow. Okay. Well, that's pretty cool. You were the author of much of the tone guide, as I understand it, right?
Yes.
Real quick, what are some of the other chapters or sections in this super valuable support guide? Just rattle them off.
So there's the tone guide, which is within the principles of providing excellent support. It's like one of the things they're like how to do excellent support. And I, off the top of my head, this is a good quiz. It's basically technical knowledge of the product. Knowing the product is essential. You can't provide excellent support if you don't know the product. The other ones are, you know what? I'm blanking on it, but there's,
All right.
I mean, the tone guide's in there. I could look it up really quick, but it's basically, it walks you through all of the, am I still there?
Yeah.
Okay. I thought I closed the window for a second. I was like, oh crap. I think
Whoops.
I just, dang it. But yeah, it's, support manual. That finding that interplay between how well you know the product, and that also comes back to what I just said about like it's unrealistic for me to expect anybody, myself, anybody, to fully understand all of our add-ons because we've got a bunch of them that we support. And so when we tell people when we're onboarding, like as you come into this role, you'll get a ticket about the MailChimp add-on, like 1 in every 50 tickets or something. Maybe. I mean, it's not, it's a widely used add-on, but it's not very complex. It kind of just does what it's supposed to do and whatever. And so if you're not familiar with the MailChimp add-on and you finally get that ticket, now's your chance to go and figure out the MailChimp add-on. And so that product knowledge piece, it's like, the main thing is, again, willingness to learn, and ability to learn fairly quickly. I'm trying to like multitask and find it over here.
It's not important. That wasn't a good question. I wonder, how do you feel about the standards for support in our industry? Do you think that they're too low or good or rising or changing?
I think a lot of people in our industry still kind of live by this old school support mantra of like, we fire customers when they're too difficult. And like I said, I'm way farther down that old school path than Matt is. And that he's done such a good job of helping me to learn that, there's almost, and we have fired some customers. There have been some instances where people either don't support the values that we want to live by, and we reserve the right to not give them a license and refund their money. But that's been really rare. I can only think of maybe twice in 2 years that it's been that. And it's always been something like a white supremacist organization that wants to use our software or something. It's like, we're not going to do that, or something like that. Versus, just what you see in a lot of support interactions in the WordPress community is this idea of, where the customer's not always right, and we're gonna fire the customer because they got too difficult or they snapped back at us or whatever. And what I found is, and what we found is, if you can get past the frustration, and this might be a result of our customers are pretty gentle comparatively speaking, because we're mainly dealing with nonprofits. Like our WP Business Reviews product has a totally different type of customer base, but even there, we don't end up having to get rid of customers. Like, these people are giving us money and we can solve their problem. And so I think that support in WordPress gets a bad rap because of people who start to do things like, and I am very, very, very hesitant to do stuff like blame the other plugin. or, this is your theme's fault. You need to go talk to your theme support. Like, we
Yeah.
will bend over backwards to resolve a theme conflict, like all the way over backwards. Like,
Mm.
hey, if you can get me a zip of your premium theme, I'll go through and figure out what's causing this conflict and patch it and send it to your theme developer for them to patch it. And it's like,
Wow.
trying as hard as we can to never say this is somebody else's problem, because they're coming to us for support. They're going to get support. Now, we do sometimes. In fact, I have this week sent somebody ultimately to their theme support, but I don't send them just with, hey, the Give support rep said that this was something that's your fault. Can you fix it? I send them a line number. The Give support rep says that on line 123 of this file, this function is calling something that's not compatible with my version of PHP. How can you fix that? It's like, give them everything you can to fix the problem, because that's what makes happy customers. That's what, same with the bill waivers at AT&T that would spend $700 in my store after I resolve their problem. That person that I just solved that problem for, by giving them a script to give to their theme developer, they're our customer for as long as they need donations. They're going to be using Give to get those donations.
And that's very resolution oriented,
right?
And thinking about resolution of like actually solving the problem, and not resolution being closing the ticket, because there's a difference there.
Right, exactly. And that we say all the time, like, Matt is fanatical about keeping stats, and like making sure that we can track how many tickets we're closing and how well we're doing getting to resolution. But he's also really careful to say, look, we're not driving towards this stat for the sake of the number, like the time to resolution. Like, we're driving to this so that we can solve the problem for our customers, like actually resolve the problem. I would much rather us actually resolve the problem than to have a really good time to first response on our, our stats. That doesn't matter when I can actually solve the problem for the user. That's going to affect the bottom line. It's just a vanity metric otherwise. And don't try to answer lots of tickets because it makes you look better for some boss that cares about numbers. Drive towards fixing the problem, and then the stats will reflect accuracy and truth, like, oh, it is taking us longer to answer this. And then we can say to the development team, hey, we've got a real issue with this add-on because it's generating twice the support tickets that this other add-on is, with half the number of installs or downloads or whatever. And so they're able to then say, okay, we got a real issue here in user interface or whatever, to fix. And so, yeah.
Well, tell me a little bit about what you do in your spare time outside of work.
Do I have spare time? This is the question.
The closest thing.
That's whatever. Right. Yeah, I have 3 kids, so every now and then I like to live vicariously through my teammates that don't have any children. I'm like, so tell me what you're going to do after work, because I'm going to go change diapers. No, I love playing music. I love, I do have 3 kids, and I do actually like them most of the time. And so doing kid stuff. My kids are real involved in the YMCA, going playing sports, and they do YMCA summer camps that are awesome during the day. So yeah, playing with the kids, playing music. If I get time, I like to play disc golf. It's like ball golf, but way cheaper.
Right. So. Right. Yeah, I've played disc golf once upon a time. Okay. Do you have anything on your calendar for this year? I'm assuming WordCamp Raleigh is coming up pretty soon. Like, that's just a few weeks away, I think.
Yeah, it's like April 6th and 7th.
What else is on your calendar? You probably should. I mean, that's up to you. You
no
do
pressure,
you.
whatever.
Yeah. It's coming up though. But what else is on your calendar for this year?
Oh man, let's see. I know that I know of. Obviously, it will be as a team going to WordCamp US. But honestly, other than WordCamp Raleigh, I think WordCamp Asheville is sometime over the summer, and I would really like to make it out to that. At least it was over the summer in previous years. WordCamp Asheville. I lived in Asheville for 4 years, so it's like going home in a lot of ways. Still have my Asheville cell phone number, but yeah, would love to go to that. And then other than that, we'll be doing a lot more local meetup type stuff than WordCamps, I think. But like I said, I don't really have spare time. So
yeah. Does the team get together as a group, outside of WordCamp US?
We've done historically WordCamp San Diego has been our all-team meetup outside of WordCamp US, but this year I don't know if they're having a WordCamp San Diego, or
Sure.
I haven't heard details on it. And so I don't know. There was briefly talk of us going to Sacramento. You'll have to ask Matt that question, but I think we normally historically have done two all-team get-togethers, one at WordCamp US and one at San Diego. So I'm definitely hoping to get back out there to see the team.
Yeah, it's fun to get together with the crew.
Absolutely.
What suggestions do you have in terms of guests that I should invite on this in the show in the future?
Gosh, let me think. I heard Micah recommended Mickey Trivet. I don't know if you've talked to him yet, but
I haven't yet. I did listen to Micah's interview with Mickey.
He is an interesting character. Sure. You never know what you're going to get from him. And then there's a guy named Adam Sewell, who's a WordPress developer out of Lexington, North Carolina, who's big into the WordCamp Raleigh scene. He's been at WordCamp Raleigh since the very beginning. He speaks most years, and so Adam Sewell would be a great interview. And then other than that, I mean, of course, Adam Silver is my neighbor. He lives right in town, so you should maybe get Adam Silver on the show. I don't know if you've heard of him.
Maybe you could introduce me. Maybe.
Yeah, maybe something. Yeah. That'd be cool.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for the good suggestions, and that kind of wraps things up. Do you mind sharing URLs or Twitter, whatever's handles and stuff? So
on Twitter, I am Ben UNC. That's BENUNC, and then pretty much the best website to find me on is WPSteward.com or betterclicktotweet.com. So you can check out all of that. Would love to have you.
That'd be great. I encourage everybody to go check those out and follow Ben on the Twitters. Thank you, Ben, for coming on the show and sharing your awesome story and great support advice with us today.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's been a real pleasure. I'll catch you around the WordCamp scene.
All right. We'll see you.